AC machines can be classified in three different ways. One method is they can be called generators or motors. Okay. The second method is they can be single phase or three phase machines. And the third method is that they can be synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous machines operate at a constant speed. Asynchronous machines do not. Asynchronous machines are also known as induction machines. Now today, my focus would be on generators, mostly. AC generators are also known as alternators. They, of course, can be three-phase and single-phase. The mechanical power input, rotary input, is given by normally using turbines. There are times when something other than turbine can also be used. Special cases are always there. The entity that drives the AC generators is known as by a name prime mover. Okay. Let's move through the PPT. Most of the power, AC power that we see in our homes, in industry, and in several other places is coming using three-phase alternators. When we were talking about three-phase systems, we had pointed out the advantages of three-phase systems. They are economically better. For the same amount of material, they can carry a lot more power. And also, the power produced has no time-dependent component, at least for a balanced system. Companies that provide AC power to us produce power in large numbers, obviously, and then distribute it all over the country. They have to collaborate with each other a lot. Now, what is a three-phase alternator? This PPT is made for the US, but it equally applies to this country as well. The only difference is in the US, the frequency they use is 60 hertz, while in India, we use 50 hertz. That's a minor difference. The turbines can be based on coal burning, or they can use natural gas. They can also use nuclear reaction as the input, which generates the heat that produces the steam to run the steam turbine. Generally, a single generator cannot give you enough current. So we, in practice, connect a lot of generators in parallel to supply large currents. Parallel operation of alternators is a special issue. Lot of things have to be taken care of before you can connect generators in parallel. For instance, the frequency of their outputs must be almost the same. Okay, that's one thing for sure. The voltage output coming from each of the generators must also be almost the same. Phase sequence, 120-degree phase shift among three phases must be maintained in all the generators in more or less in the same fashion, and so on. Ideally speaking, there is no difference between AC generator and DC generator. If you remove the commutator from a DC generator, you get an AC generator, single phase AC generator. Okay. In case of DC, of course, the question of three phase does not arise. But for AC generators, we have gone beyond single phase, and we have also designed a lot of three-phase generators, three-phase alternators, if you want. The basic idea is simple. You rotate a conductor in a magnetic field, and the voltage across the conductor gives you what you want. In practice, we have a large number of conductors mounted on a rotating shaft in the slots. Because commutator is not required, you connect slip rings to pick up the voltage using brushes. If the conductors are rotating, the practical problem, as I was mentioning last time, is that picking voltages from rotating conductors using brushes can be very risky when you're talking high currents. So this construction where the conductors are rotating cannot be generally used for high currents. While in reality, three-phase or even single-phase alternators are expected to produce large currents because they supply a lot of applications. So for large current or large power applications, we generally avoid having rotating conductors. We switch the role of conductor and magnetic field. We make conductors stationary by putting them on the stator, and we put the magnetic poles on the rotor. This PPT actually discusses all that. Revolving armature type alternator and revolving field type alternator, two varieties. Armature means conductors, large number of conductors coming together. So if conductors are rotating, we call it revolving armature type of construction. If poles are rotating and conductors are stationary, then it is revolving field type of construction. For large powers, we use the revolving field type of construction. Okay, this I'm going to skip. We know this. Construction is also fairly obvious. The cross section is showing a case where the poles are on the rotor. They have shown only one pair of poles. They have shown only one pole actually. Well, I mean, what should I say? One pair of north and south poles, which rotates and produces a flux, which cuts the three-phase windings on the stator and produces the voltage that you need from the stator. Okay. For three-phase construction, obviously, each phase has to be given a separate set of windings. And these windings are 120 degrees apart physically, so that when the voltage comes out, that has 120 degree phase shift progressively in it. The revolving armature type is the least used of the two basic types, obviously, because it cannot be used for high power applications. Slip rings are there in case of revolving armature type construction to pick up the voltage. This type has very limited output power because of practical reasons. Revolving field type, armature goes to the stator and poles come to the rotor. This permits much higher power output. The rotor is the rotating part of an alternator, that's obvious. Rotor has the capacity to provide rotating magnetic flux that cuts the windings on the stator and produces the voltage. The magnets on the rotor are stimulated using DC. That generally is done using a DC generator, but other methods do also exist. The output, of course, is a standard three-phase output with 120-degree phase shift progressively among the three phases. Yeah. This is the conceptual diagram showing the rotor with salient poles. Poles are physically present. That construction is known as salient pole construction. These poles are either bolted to the rotor or soldered, or in fact not soldered, welded to the rotor. For high-speed rotors, they start coming off. So this kind of construction does not suit very well if the RPM value is very high, let's say 3000 RPM or 1000 RPM or so on. But for 100 or 200 RPM, this is a good construction. For higher RPMs, we produce poles on the rotor using electromagnetic concepts. We use windings to simulate poles. That is called non-salient construction, where poles are not physically present anymore. It is also known as cylindrical rotor. The exciter is the part of the construction which supplies the DC input to the poles. It can be made brushless also. There's a standard technique where we use an AC generator and then a rectifier to produce the DC. We'll come to that later. Right now, let's move forward. Now, the frequency of the signal generated is given by a formula F equal to N multiplied by P and the entire thing divided by 120. I'll come to that in my own notes. So the number of poles and the speed at which the rotation is happening determine the frequency of the output signal. If the number of poles is 2 and RPM is 3600, then you use 3600 multiplied by 2, which is 7200, and divided by 120. You get 60 hertz. That is the frequency they use in the US. In our case, we want 50 hertz. So instead of 3600 in the top row, we will have to use 3000 RPM for 2 poles. For 4 poles, the number will be reduced by 50%. It will become 1800 for 60 hertz and 1500 for 50 hertz and so on. So important thing is that number of poles, if we make it larger, then the RPM requirement goes down, which is a very big thing when it comes to designing turbines. The output voltage magnitude depends on a lot of factors. I'll give you a formula later. The length of the conductors obviously will matter. The flux value, how strong is the flux, magnetic flux that you are producing, that of course would matter. And the rotor speed, of course, would matter, for sure. There are a lot more practical factors, nature of winding, etc., that also come into the picture. Now, putting two alternators in parallel, as I said, is necessary because you want larger currents. In fact, more than 2 can also be put in parallel if necessary. These are the 3 requirements. Voltages must be identical from each of the generators. Phase rotation, positive sequence or negative sequence must be identical for all the generators. And the voltages coming out must be in phase so that we start at 0 in all the generators at the same time. Okay, I'll ignore this for now. This is about protecting the alternator, but I'm not going into that right now. It's a review. I think you know this by now. So let's move forward. Okay, we are almost done with this document. Now let me go back to the document which I was showing you last time, which is my own notes. Obviously, you know all this, that machines means generators and motors together. So these are fairly obvious things. The speed with which the rotor is being rotated, assuming rotating field construction, that speed will be the speed with which the flux would rotate, and that will determine the frequency of the signal being generated. Okay. So a lot of this is reiterating what you know already. This is the formula here, 120 F by P. We'll talk about motors later, so let me bypass this portion. Construction we have seen already. We'll go to motors later. Now, rotor construction is conceptually shown here. It is taken from this website. It's very difficult for me to draw these diagrams. This is a cylindrical rotor. That means the poles are not physically present. They are being produced electromagnetically. It is also known as cylindrical rotor. Okay, this is one method which is used for high-speed rotors. If the rotor is of salient pole type, then the speed cannot be too large. There's a lot of detail here, but we'll come back to it if necessary later. Gas turbines usually produce much higher RPMs, as high as 3000, while wind turbines produce hardly 100 or 200 RPMs. Diesel engines also do not produce much large RPM values. So for all those prime movers, it is better to use salient pole construction. Hydroelectric turbines also do not produce very large speeds. These are practical realities. We have to live with them. Now, this maybe you cannot read it properly, but it reiterates what I have told you already. Classification of AC machines. I think we have gone through it already. They can be either motors and generators, they can be single phase or three phase, or they can be synchronous or asynchronous. That is all mentioned in this particular page. Okay, so go through it later. Now, reiteration of what I have been telling you. The kind of turbines that we have today are mentioned here. Obviously, turbines mean converting rotational energy from a fluid, which can be steam, which can be water or something else. So converting that energy into mechanical rotation. Wind turbine, hydro turbines, gas turbines, steam turbines, nuclear turbines. Nuclear turbine essentially is a steam turbine. Only thing is nuclear reaction is used to produce the required heat and the steam thereby. Prime mover is a general word. It includes turbines. But entities other than turbines can also be used as prime movers in spaces. You will probably learn about prime movers in some other courses also. Converting heat energy into rotation, etc., is also possible. Non-thermal sources are also there for making prime movers, which of course means hydraulic, wind, tidal power, etc. So important thing is that prime mover is a general word, while turbine is a specific kind of prime mover. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Again, classification. AC generators can be single phase, three phase. In single phase, you can have rotating armature type or stationary armature type. In three phase also, you can have, in theory at least, rotating armature type and stationary armature type. And a third possibility is also there, which is called asynchronous type or induction type. I'll come to that later. But practically speaking, most of the three-phase AC generators use neither induction type of construction nor rotating armature type of construction. That's why I have put a cross sign on these two. Most of the three-phase AC generators use static armature, stationary armature, and rotating field. Okay. So wherever you see a cross, that means this is generally not used practically, although theory allows this. Induction machines are normally used only for motors. They have not become popular for generators for some regions. I'll come to that when we talk about induction machines. But right now, just see that for single phase, both rotating armature and stationary armature type constructions are reasonably popular. But for three phase, it is only stationary armature type of construction, which is invariably deployed because you need high powers. That's about it. Now, this is the formula that I was telling you about. It applies to both single phase and three phase circuits. In principle, if we remove the commutator in a DC generator, we get a single phase AC generator. The frequency F of the generated voltage is given by F equal to NP divided by 120. P is the total number of magnetic poles in the machine, and N is the revolutions per minute at which the rotor is rotated using a prime mover. Now, there's a lot of detail here, which would be nice to know. So, they are implement related. For lower power requirements, AC generators mentioned in the previous point work well. However, if power required are higher, if powers required are higher, power requirements are higher, which is usually the case, the rotating conductors start becoming impractical because they have to carry large currents and they are rotating, so chances of accidents are higher. Burning out may happen. So we generally move the armature voltage generating part to the stator for high powers and let the rotor carry the magnetic poles, which do not demand high currents. Poles do not demand high currents to produce the flux. And these two are, I've been saying again and again, known as rotating armature and rotating field type of constructions. In case of three-phase generators, they are invariably rotating field type because of the high currents. The stator houses the three-phase windings, which can be either delta type or Y type. As the rotor rotates, it creates a rotating magnetic flux which intersects the three-phase windings on the armature and thereby produces the required three-phase source of AC power across the 3 or 4 wires coming out from the stator. 4 means Y configuration, because neutral will also be required. Rotor can be either salient pole type or non-salient pole type. I have been saying that again and again. This kind of generator is also known as synchronous generator because it operates only at a fixed RPM value. This especially becomes pertinent when we talk about motors of this kind. Now, because of the high powers involved, a lot of heat would be generated inside the construction. So cooling becomes a very important issue if you want to keep the generator going for a long time, especially. There are methods like natural wind cooling, which is the ideal case. You don't have to worry about putting anything else. Or forced air cooling using large fans in various parts of the construction. If that is not sufficient, water pipes are run around the walls of the construction. These generators are housed in big buildings, So we run water pipes around them to take heat away. Air conditioning, if possible, will also help. Regular maintenance is a must. Windings get hot, start being worn out. So periodic inspection of windings and replacing them if necessary. Same thing about brushes, because they are touching the rotating part all the time. They'll wear and tear all the time. Also bolts, nuts, especially if you are using salient pole construction, and even in other parts of the construction, bolts and nuts are there. So keeping an eye on them. If they are becoming loose, replacing them. If they are being rusted, replacing them. And by the way, the stator is also built of laminated construction, reduce iron loss in the stator. The rotor generally has rotating DC winding, which is known as field winding, and the stator generally has the stationary three-phase AC winding, armature winding. A single generator of this kind, stationary armature plus rotating field, can easily generate megawatts of power, because you can pick up the power without having rotating parts. Soldering is enough to pick up the voltage being generated. Voltages as high as 33 kilovolt can be generated by a single generator of this kind. That is the biggest advantage of stationary armature construction. Yeah. The stator consists of a slotted laminated core into which three-phase windings are fitted. Each phase winding has a number of coils. There's a lot of practical detail in terms of windings. Maybe you don't care too much about it, but it affects the amount of voltage being generated. When I come to the formula for voltage being generated, I'll show you how these windings affect the value. Okay, so maybe you can ignore this portion. It is meant more for electrical engineers. The rotor can be either low speed or high speed. Low speed means salient poles, high speed means cylindrical construction. Now, rotor diameter cannot be very large because then the velocity of the parts on the periphery will become too large and will become unsafe. But we need, it has been shown mathematically that the volume of the rotor affects the total power that you can get out of the generator. There's a relationship between them. But since the diameter of the rotor cannot be very large, we have to make the length of the rotor large enough to get the same volume, so that the amount of power that we can get is large. But then if you have a long rotor, then cooling becomes even more of a headache. The heat generated in long rotors cannot be conducted away quickly enough to limit the temperature rise in the core of the rotor to a value that will protect the windings and the insulation. The insulation can also burn at high temperatures. We end up completely enclosing the alternator and using forced air ventilation to solve the problem. The cooling air must be filtered. You don't want dirty air to go in again and again. It will contaminate the entire construction. So filtering the air is a must before air goes back. The recycling the air is okay, but you have to filter it every time. Sometimes it is also washed away by passing it through a spray chamber to make it cleaner, so that alternator's lifespan will be extended. It will not see accumulation of impurities too much, especially dust. If you are washing the air before putting it in, another advantage is that the air temperature will come down, which will help in handling the heat. Cooling is a big issue for alternators because high powers are involved. Hydrogen gas rather than air can also be used. It has better properties, but it is more expensive to get hydrogen. This is all decided by top level committees when we are designing alternators. Okay, so I give you a very brief idea of how cooling issues are handled for alternators. Of course, this we already know that a small DC input is required for exciting the poles. That generator is known as DC exciter. A small DC generator is generally used. Salient pole construction, here I am showing schematically. The poles have got shoes at the end. That's why I'm showing a narrow line there. These are typically good for up to 200 RPM or so. Wound rotors are also known as cylindrical rotors. They create poles electromagnetically by using windings on the rotor itself. And for high speeds, they are the choice. Now, generated voltage per phase, it is not the total three-phase voltage, it is per phase. The formula is easy to derive. It is similar to what we did for transformers. The formula, this is RMS value of generated voltage in each phase and magnitude. We are talking only magnitudes here. 4.443, which is actually 2 pi divided by square root of 2, multiplied by flux phi, multiplied by the frequency, multiplied by the speed. No, sorry, my mistake. Multiplied by something related to the winding details. NP is the number of turns in each phase. The winding for each phase, how many turns it has got. KD is a constant, which is an empirical constant, which, without going into details, which essentially captures the loss in voltage by the nature of the winding, by the direction of the winding. Usually you are given KD value by the winding designer, so you don't have to worry about calculating it. Kp depends on the pitch of the coil. You know, I'm sure you know what pitch is. Two successive maxima, what is the distance between them in the coil? I'm deliberately avoiding detailed drawings of windings, because that is hell of a lot of job. But depending on the pitch of the coil in the stator, another empirical correction factor Kp may come in. Its value is also given to us most of the time. So these two correction factors are there because of the practical reasons, Kd and Kp. Np is the number of turns, and the rest is similar to what we did for transformer EMF. Okay. Now, simple numerical problems, not complicated at all. Calculate the speed at which a large 24-pole rotor must be run to generate 50 Hertz supply. Simple solution, F equal to Np divided by 120. We need to figure out N. F is given as 50 Hertz, 24 poles are there, so simply plug in the values. The requirement is 250 RPM. So maybe a wind turbine would do the job. If number of poles goes down to 12, the speed requirement will go up by a factor of 2, and so on. Nature of turbine is determined by what RPM you need, essentially speaking. That's why this calculation is very important, although the formula is very simple. Second problem, calculate the line voltage, not they are asking line voltage, remember, while the formula we have is for phase voltage. Calculate the line voltage of a 50 Hertz star-star alternator given the following details. Flux is 0.67 Weber per pole, Kd is given to you, Kp is also given to you, Np is 36 turn phase. So what you do is you apply this formula first. This one. Plug in all the values given to you. You get Eg equal to 4460 volts. I hope my calculations are correct. Then it's a star connection. So line voltage will be phase voltage multiplied by square root of 3. Hence the line voltage is 7725 volts. If they had given you delta connection, then line voltage would be the same as phase voltage. Then the answer would be 4460 volts. So watch out the language of the problem. Okay, star-star case means you take the phase voltage multiplied by square root of 3 to get the line voltage. Delta means phase voltage is same as line voltage. We are talking magnitudes, don't worry about phase here. These are RMS values also, keep in mind. Now another, I'm going to stop soon. Another interesting factor here, of course, is the voltage regulation, which is defined in the same manner in which we defined it for DC generators. No load voltage minus full load voltage divided by full load voltage, and the entire thing multiplied by 100 to get the value in percentage. The lower it is, the better it is. In practice, 5 to 10% is okay. here is a problem, then I'm stopping after that. A three-phase star-connected alternator has an output voltage of 3300 volt at full load. I assume it's line voltage with thing is we are talking AC machines, AC. So every time you give a an output voltage, you also mention at what power factor you measured it, because it would change with the power factor of the load. So that's why you see this additional information that at unity power factor, the no load output voltage, no full load output voltage is 3300 volt. When the load is removed, that means we have no load situation and flux remains unchanged, the voltage rises to 3350 volt. Calculate the percentage regulation. Calculation is simple. No load voltage minus full load voltage divided by full load voltage and multiply the result by 100. You will get 1.52%. But more important is that in the answer, you should also mention at what power factor the result was obtained. This was not done in DC generators. Your answer is not complete until and unless you mention the power factor also. Okay.